Beyond the Red Waste lies Qarth, a city shrouded in mystery, and Dany's time in the city is more than a little confusing. The world of Ice and Fire lacks a chapter on Qarth, which probably highlights how important the city will be in the future of our story. So let's delve into the mystery that is Qarth, the greatest city that ever was or ever will be. Now only pieces of Qarth's history have been presented to us. We know that the Qartheen are the last remnants of the Quaithe people. The Quaithe were mostly destroyed by a civilization called the Sarnori or the Tall Men, and then finished off by the Dothraki. This all happened in the century of blood that followed the doom of Valyria. Supposedly only Qarth survives, at least according to Maester Yandel in the world of Ice and Fire. However, that's not really what Dany and her crew find in the Red Waste. They come across a city they name Vaes Toloro. Vaes Toloro means City of Bones, and they name it this because the city literally has bones lying around in the streets. Now bones eventually crumble and blow away, so this shows that Vaes Toloro was probably destroyed within the last 100 years. Of course, this places the destruction of the Red Waste cities a couple centuries after Maester Yandel's histories. What's also odd is that Aggo finds a bracelet with a huge uncut fire opal in it. Fire opals are compared to diamonds, rubies, and dragon eggs in value, so it's really tough to believe that a plundering army would leave this one behind. So something seems to have cleared out Vaes Toloro fairly recently, and it wasn't plundering Dothraki. Was it war? Disease? Famine? Monsters? Now the Qartheen are a pale folk despite being surrounded by tribes that are rather dark in appearance. Why they're pale is unknown. They live in the desert and don't seem to come from a northern climate. But then again, neither did the Valyrians. Because of their paleness, the Dothraki call the Qartheen milkmen. This also seems to be a slur meaning coward in the Dothraki language, as Jorah is called a milkman by Kokotho. This is despite the fact that Jorah is actually quite swarthy. Now it's unknown why the Qartheen are cowards specifically. Perhaps the Quaithe ran from the Dothraki rather than fighting them. Now the red waste around Qarth seems to be the result of some sort of climate change. The walls of Qarth display all sorts of animals, including wolves, that are clearly now gone. Perhaps the lands around Qarth should be seen as a warning for those in Westeros. Did the Qartheen not find their song? Now the Qartheen, or at least the other cities of the Red Waste, have a history with dragons. Dany's blood riders find a dragon skeleton in the middle of the Red Waste. Now a couple dragons went missing at the end of the Dance of the Dragons, namely Sheepstealer and Cannibal. It's possible that this dragon skeleton is one of those two dragons, and it would be awfully interesting if Nettles ruled over a Red Waste city. Perhaps this dragon is linked with the destruction of Vaes Toloro. Did it go to war with the Dothraki? Did it go to war with the Qartheen? Now Dany's blood rider Jogo is the first one to make it to Qarth with news of Dany's dragons. And I do wonder how this news went down. Qarth is ruled by a body called the Pureborn, who deal with three rival factions, the 13, the Tourmaline Brotherhood, and the Ancient Guild of Spicers. The Warlocks also play a role in politics somehow, but it's all not really explained. Yet weirdly the people the Pureborn send out to find Dany are Xaro, Pyat Pree, and Quaithe. Xaro is of the 13, and Pyat Pree is of the Warlocks, and Quaithe is, well, Quaithe, but one has to wonder if the interests of the Tourmaline Brotherhood and the Spicers were represented. Now the Pureborn are giving a lot of trust to Xaro, Pyat, and Quaithe. Dany's dragons are massively valuable and a potentially devastating weapon. Jorah specifically says that people will desire them. Yet Xaro, Pyat, and Quaithe are allowed to retrieve Dany for the city. This makes me think that the three emissaries are rivals, meant to check each other. But why send out these three at all? Why not send out the Qartheen army to slaughter Dany and take her dragons? Why be so diplomatic? A living Dany must serve the Pureborn's interest. But how? Well, let's remember that the Qartheen do have dragons in their legends. They believe that the sun and the moon will kiss and bring forth dragons. It seems uncertain if the Qartheen believe this will be a good or bad thing. And let's also remember that Qarth is a major port town, so they've heard prophecies from other places. I imagine in the same way that we the reader are confused about prophecies, so are the Qartheen. Is Dany's arrival monumentally good or monumentally bad? Now we know that the Warlocks are not fans of Dany. The House of the Undying tries to kill Dany, and Pyat personally tries to stab her. There seems to be a good reason for this. When Pyat first talks to Dany, he speaks to her in guttural Dothraki. His language abilities show that he communicates with Dothraki often. Now, as we know, according to the Dothraki, Dany will birth the stallion who mounts the world. The Crones of Vaes Dothrak even specifically say that the stallion will attack the Qartheen. So if the Warlocks believe this prophecy, it would be logical for Pyat to see Dany as a force for evil that needs to be killed. In fact, Dany's ordeal at the House of the Undying can almost be seen as a trial. The Undying want to show her things before they kill her. Many of the House of the Undying visions are violent, but one in particular would be absolutely frightening to a Qartheen. A tall lord with copper skin and silver gold hair stood beneath the banner of a fiery stallion, a burning city behind him. Well, that sounds like the child of Daenerys causing massive destruction. Although probably misguided, the Warlocks and the Undying were probably just trying to save the world. Xaro, on the other hand, hates the Warlocks and calls them liars. He spent an inordinate amount of time warning Dany to avoid them, so I imagine his beliefs are in opposition to theirs. Xaro seems to want Dany alive and wants to marry her. Now yes, Xaro seems to be interested in her dragons, but Xaro could have taken her dragons at any time and didn't. It's marriage that seems to be his primary interest. Now let's keep in mind that people like the Green Grace believe that breeding with Dany will produce a savior, so it may be that Xaro sees Dany as a savior that can help Qarth, or at least help him, and if he gets to father a savior, all the better. Xaro even says, "Give me a son, my sweet song of joy." And then there's Quaithe. Quaithe is a huge subject, but for now it's important to note that she's from Asha, which means she probably knows about the Azor Ahai legend. So I'm guessing that Quaithe thinks Dany is a hero, but a hero that is needed somewhere besides Qarth. This would explain why Quaithe wants Dany to leave the city. But let's go back to the Pureborn. When Jogo arrived in Qarth, I imagine Pyat, Xaro, and Quaithe all petitioned for 3 different solutions to the Dany problem. Kill her, from Pyat, embrace her, from Xaro, and send her on her way, from Quaithe. Not knowing what to do, the Pureborn seem to have sent forward all 3 characters on a fact-finding mission. Now, interestingly, the other 2 factions of Qarth, the Ancient Guild of Spicers and the Tourmaline Brotherhood, do not send representatives. We know little of the Spicers other than that they are slavers and presumably Spicers. They do call for Dany's death after the destruction of the House of the Undying, which shows that they may be on good terms with the Warlocks. After all, why should they care if someone kills the Warlocks in self-defense? Xaro certainly didn't. In fact, one would think that killing Warlocks would endear Dany to Qarth. After all, the Warlocks seem like a friggin' menace. They even attack one of the wives of the Pureborn. The Spicers being in league with the Warlocks would explain why they didn't send a representative to Dany. Pyat would already be representing the Spicers' interests. And I do wonder if the Ancient Guild of Spicers has links to House Spicer in Westeros. Jane Westerling is half Spicer, and she, whether intentionally or unintentionally, did bring down House Stark. House Spicer is suspiciously rewarded with Castamere after the war, when they should be being punished. It would be awfully interesting if one Spicer group were secretly trying to bring down the Starks, and another Spicer group were trying to bring down the Targaryens. Someone tried to kill Dany with a sorrowful man, and the Warlocks and the Ancient Guild of Spicers are the top 2 suspects. And then there's the Tourmaline Brotherhood. Now they are known for giving Dany her crown, the 3-headed dragon crown. Now it's interesting that Xaro doesn't like this crown and wants Dany to trade it in for a new one. It seems the 3-headed dragon is important to the Qartheen, as if they know about the prince that was promised prophecy. If the Tourmaline Brotherhood believes that Dany is the prince that was promised, it seems their interests are very similar to Quaithe's, which may explain why they didn't have representation in the Red Waste. And the Tourmaline Brotherhood coincidentally asks for Dany's expulsion from the city, which is what Quaithe wants as well, for Dany to leave Qarth. But the Tourmaline Brotherhood has over 800 ships and doesn't lift a finger to help Dany, which makes me think they have different allegiances. The Gemstone Tourmaline is incredibly rare in our story, but there is one man who wears a Tourmaline ring, Illyrio. Let's keep in mind that Illyrio also talks about the dragon having 3 heads, and with strong Beloas and Barristan heading to Qarth to pick up Dany, the Tourmaline Brotherhood does exactly what Illyrio wants. They don't kill Dany, but they don't help her either. Interestingly, when Xaro visits Dany and Meereen, he's completely silent on the Brotherhood. He tells her that the Pureborn are wimps, the Spicers are dumb, the Undying are dead, but he says nothing of the Brotherhood. So it seems Qarth was incredibly divided on how to deal with Dany, with some people feeling that they should embrace her, some feeling they should kill her, and others feeling they should expel her from the city. These divisions were based on which prophecy people believed in. Was she a monster or the mother of a monster? Or was she a hero or the mother of a hero? It seems Daenerys doesn't even know who she is. Regardless, it seems to be the rivalries and the unknown that caused her to be relatively safe in Qarth. The Qartheen didn't know whether to crown her or kill her. Now things change a little when Dany gets to Meereen. The 13 now want her gone, and the Pureborn seem to want her dead. The Pureborn even call her a flaming sword, which of course reminds us of the Lightbringer prophecy. But the city is clearly still divided. Qarth has over 3,000 ships. A united Qarth could kill Dany at any time, but only a handful of ships are in Slaver's Bay, so I wonder who these ships belong to. Whatever the case, it's rather interesting that the Qartheen have failed to unify again. They failed to unite against the Sarnori, or the Dothraki, or whatever caused the Red Waste, and now they've failed to unite behind or against Daenerys. Now there are other interesting characters lurking in Qarth as well. Dany runs into the Cinnamon Wind, who are associates of Marwyn. Now Sorella Sand hangs out with Marwyn, and Sorella Sand is half Summer Islander. So I surmise that the Cinnamon Wind is working for House Martell. But the Cinnamon Wind's story is also suspicious. They claim that Robert Baratheon is dead and Ned Stark is imprisoned. And they say that they got this information in Old Town, but they also say that they stopped in Dorne. So shouldn't they now know that Ned is dead? It seems the Cinnamon Wind actually found out this information in Dorne and was downplaying their visit there. But those aren't the only suspicious characters. Dany also runs into the twin ships Greyhound and Quicksilver. Now Greyhounds are hunting dogs, and the word Greyhound is only used at one other time in our story. Sam uses it to describe twin ships that accompany the Huntress in Old Town Harbor. If these were the same ships, it means House Hightower was watching Dany and Qarth. And finally there's the Slow-Eyed Maid, which seems to be a Braavosi ship. Now Dany thinks the ship is too small, but weirdly the captain of the ship claims he didn't take on Dany because of dragons. But what's really weird is we know the ship makes it to Pentos, and it's heading towards Braavos, and yet it crashes on the Sisters. This makes me think that this ship had another stop, either at Widow's Watch or the Fingers. And as we all know, Littlefinger, whose family is Braavosi, is from the Fingers. So these odd ships make me think that other huge players were watching Dany and Qarth. Now you may be thinking, oh my gosh, we're almost to the end of the video and we've hardly talked about Quaithe. Well, I'll make it up to you. The next video is entirely on Quaithe.